Now, but let's just go back to Ilhan Omar and the I mean, there are so many things. I try to be fair. I do be fair. I am fair. I will see the other side of the debate, even if I don't agree with it. I will argue and steelman the other side of the debate, even if I don't agree with it. And I'll get into it here. But you have to listen to this and appreciate the arbitrariness of it, the political opportunity of this. And I'm going to stop at a few points just to highlight my points.
Or cancel student debt, period. We are here to tell the president that
I would love someone who knows just to determine the value of the clothing that she's wearing. Like, and the shoes, the jacket looks very, very fancy. There's nothing wrong with fancy clothes. There's actually nothing wrong with accumulating personal wealth. There's actually nothing wrong with being paid for the work that you do. Where it becomes a problem is when you say you go pander to the people who can't possibly ever afford this either now or in the future, and you dress in an ostentatious manner while appealing to the people who you're politically profiting from, and financially profiting from. But okay, if anyone knows how much that jacket, I don't think we can see the shoes, but the jacket looks potentially identifiable and potentially expensive.
With the stroke of a pen, he carried it. We are here to tell the president that with the stroke of a pen, he can and should and must cancel student debt.
No, I mean, I don't mean to state the obvious to people who know the obvious already, but if you cancel debt that someone owes someone, you're not canceling it, you're transferring it. It's great. If the students don't have to repay the banks, someone does in theory. And if someone doesn't repay the banks directly for that canceled debt, well, the banks are going to recoup that loss somewhere else down the line. It's called passing the buck. So with a stroke of a pen, you could also print $800 billion. You could just, with a stroke of a pen, you could just give everyone a beautiful bill that says everyone would be a billionaire overnight with the stroke of a pen. That must make it right. That must make it logical. That must make it economically sound.
Period. We have 45 million people in this country who are shackled with student debt.
We have 45 million people in this country whom are shackled with student. Why can't I get rid of that? Get this out of here. I don't want to see that. No. Shackled with student debt. Now, by the way, the idea of shackles and the idea of comparing having assumed, presumably voluntarily, to take on a debt versus being shackled. I hate playing the game. What if a Republican had analogized student debt to shackles? Shackles really relates to something specific in particular. You might have people objecting to the idea of comparing having shackles thrust on your hands to voluntarily choosing to take on a debt so that you could study what you want to study. So interesting. Again, double standards up the wazoo. And it's, it's not double standards. I like someone said, it's not double standards. It's hierarchy. They get to do it and nobody else does. And if anybody else does it and they are lower down on the political totem pole, then they get lambasted. How dare you analogize student debt to shackles and everything historical that shackles related to? How dare you? But Ilhan gets to do it. The liberal, the one side of the political spectrum gets to do it when analogizing it, comparing it to debt that someone voluntarily took on to study that which was of interest to them. But we'll get a little.
Have to realize that's 45 million people who are putting off the opportunity to start that business they wanted to start.
I'm sorry. They assume debt to study to put off, what did she say? Getting that business, starting that business?
Start that business.
To starting that business that they wanted? These are people, students, who presumably took on that debt to learn something so that they can start that business that they wanted. I mean, unless what Ilhan Omar is saying is they studied something that is so useless to the business that they want to start that it's actually an impediment for them to start that business. I don't know what business she's talking about, but I know there's a lot of people who might actually agree that some of these students have opted to study things which are useless to starting a business. And I'll put myself in that category because I was in that category. Studying philosophy at McGill, for being brutally honest, as we should always be. Well, we're always honest. We should be blunt. Studying philosophy is absolutely useless to starting a business because it's not a trade. It's not a profession. Studying philosophy as an undergraduate degree is about training the mind, learning how to learn, learning how to succeed in university so that you can then take those skills and then presumably go get a second degree, a professional degree, a graduate degree. So you learn how to study, you learn how to do what the teachers want you to do, regurgitate the information that the teachers want you to regurgitate. That's what school is. I mean, despite, all the other stuff, that's what school is. Studying philosophy is certifiably useless to starting a business. Maybe it will teach you how to think critically. That's true. But in terms of starting a business, you need to learn specific knowledge unique to a business, that business, or business at large, hence an MBA. So you go get the philosophy degree, which is useless on its own, except to train you how to think, and then you go get an MBA afterwards. I know the argument. Not everybody has the privilege or the luxury of doing a useless MBA to then get into a professional trade or a professional degree. Then you make those decisions. But the idea that Ilhan Omar is actually saying your degree is useless to starting the business, that's degrading. You're calling someone's degree in philosophy or someone's degree in religious studies useless to starting a business. That's kind of mean.
Putting off the opportunities to start that business they want.
They studied to invest in that business that they wanted to start so that they would be better at it, so they could make money doing it, and then presumably repay the debt that they assumed to get that investment into their education to start that business that they wanted. Moving on.
To start. It is 45 million people who are putting off the opportunity to start the family they want to start.
Having debt precludes you from starting a family.
That is 45 million people.
So that's interesting. I started a family. We were quite heavily in debt at one point in time. So you study something that you get indebted to study, and now you come, I'm not going to say crying in any sense. I appreciate, by the way, education in the United States. Different situation here. I know there's state colleges and colleges that are community colleges that are more affordable. And it might be a case of some people saying, I want to eat the filet mignon, but I don't want to pay for the filet mignon type thing. As if to say also that filet mignon is any, one university or the prestigious ones are actually providing any better education than the community ones. I think people might take issue with that. In some people's minds, it might just be a case of class laundering. It might be a case of elitism that many people complain about, that the good universities don't provide anything better of an education than the state colleges, but they certainly give you a better infrastructure of connections and network so that you can say you're part of the fancy boys club. Like I went to Harvard and whatever. I went to University of Toronto, but I went to Université Laval. So there are, from what I understand, alternatives, but people might be wanting the filet mignon but not paying for it, or they order the filet mignon and then the bill comes and like, I can't pay for this. I want filet mignon forgiveness. But the underlying, the truly fundamental underlying question is, why only student debt? Like, why only student debt? I appreciate the argument that education is a right. It should be provided for as affordable as possible, especially to those who don't have the means to pay for it. Because if someone who doesn't have the money to pay for an education can't get an education, that's a vicious circle out of which one can never escape. But as far as I understand, there are alternatives in the States. It's not exactly what in the States. Everyone thinks that healthcare in Canada is totally free, totally awesome, and that's one of the misconceptions of Americans to Canada. And in Canada, people think like, oh, you can't possibly get an education unless you go to Harvard or spend $40,000 a semester, which is also not the case. So right now we're in this circumstance where the new political token is to say, let's forgive student debt, but no other debt. There's obviously political opportunism there. And why? Because promise to give things for free to a younger generation that doesn't necessarily understand nothing is for free. You can get their vote for now. And then one day they're going to be tax-paying adults, and they're going to go, why the heck am I paying 52% in tax? Oh, well, you wanted to forgive your student debt 20 years ago. Now you got to pay for, let's call them people with a freeloading ideology that says, I want to study a degree which might be useless to a business, and I want to do it for free. I'm going to get to the actual steelman of why forgiving student debt in particular, as far as I understand it. The question is, though, why only student debt? Why not mortgages? We took out a mortgage on our house. It was big. It was big debt. Big debt that I had to pay for monthly because we chose to live in a house and we chose to try to own with all of the benefits, but all of the pitfalls that come with home ownership. Why not student credit card debt? Why not student clothing? Why not student food? I mean, paying for groceries is very difficult. By the way, the ultimate irony. They're right now, here's the shiny little thing, students. We're going to forgive your student debt. Oh, but by the way, your groceries have gone up 30%. Your gas has gone up 30%. Oh, I'll get that later. Phone's ringing. Your cost of living has gone up. Let's distract you from those consequences. But that's Putin's food price hike. That's Putin's gas price hike. Let's distract you from that and dangle in front of you, but only for some of you who haven't already repaid your student loans, this free little carrot, and make it seem like it's a right that you retroactively get to have debt forgiven that you voluntarily assumed for your own self-fulfilling purposes. Self-serving, self-fulfilling, self-interested purposes. But so why only student debt? Now, some people will say student debt survives bankruptcy, so you can't even bankrupt your way out of student debt. It's a legitimate point. So amend the bankruptcy law. Let students who want to file for bankruptcy, they're not students at that point. Let adults who have voluntarily taken on student debt to study whatever degree that they wanted to study that actually they found contributes nothing to the business they want to start, let them make that decision. Bankruptcy, I mean, to that extent, why not forgive all debt so that people don't have to go bankrupt? So the steel man is that there are certain attributes of student loan which make it unique to other debt. You cannot bankrupt your way out of it. You'll still have to owe it after. Well, I would think then maybe as a starter, amend the bankruptcy laws so that students or adults who want to bankrupt themselves out of student debt can do so, but live with the consequences of having to have admitted to their creditors, I can't pay the debts that I voluntarily took on. Cancel my Visa debt. Oh yeah. So it's just, but what it is, it's appealing to the cheapest political denominator. Just promise freebies to the people who don't actually contribute in the active sense of paying taxes to pay for this stuff. Pretend you're canceling the debt when you're just transferring it to other people. And then lo and behold, there's a reason why a lot of students who start off as young, liberal, ideological optimists turn into 42-year-old cynics who realize there is no free lunch. There is no such thing as a gift by and large. And somebody pays for everything. Everything gets paid for by somebody. And by the way, that canceling the student debt, everyone's going to pay for it, even the students. It's like, okay, but you won't pay for that debt so that you have now your degree, which Ilhan Omar is saying useless to the business that you want to start. Good for you. Now you don't pay for that. Write that off and ignore the fact that the rest of your cost of living is going up. Okay.